Hey friends, Harry here. I pulled the foam panels off an old COVID video wall in an unused Sunday school class here at Pleasant Valley Church of the Brethren in Weir's Cave. I dusted off a mic I haven't used since live streaming from my living room a few years ago, and I hit record with my buddy Millard. What spilled out felt too good to keep to ourselves. And so here's the story behind our brand new Sunday morning podcast / Sunday school class and a taste of the conversation that launched it. Enjoy. And so supposedly this will work. I don't know. We'll see what happens. So I had all this stuff actually. I had the computer and I had the microphone and everything from COVID.
Oh,
the microphone mostly from COVID. And so it's what we used when we were doing online services.
Yeah.
Right?
Uh-huh.
Beth and I. Actually, mostly Beth. So yeah, I haven't used it since, but we'll see what happens.
Okay.
But yeah, the room, most everything's going to be taken out except for those gray little panels. Supposedly they absorb sound
From bouncing.
and so it's not. Josh set this up when he was here, and I guess to do green screen kind of things or whatever, and but it doesn't echo. That's really nice. So that seems to work well.
Good.
And then everything is going to get taken out, and we'll use these chairs. I'm thinking right now there'll be a little desk over here, and that's where the speakers or the interviewees or whatever guests like yourself will sit, and we'll just have a chat. And then after that, I'm thinking if anybody attends, they will have the opportunity to write. I was gonna just let them say the question, but then I thought, well, how's that going to be picked up well? And I can't walk around with a microphone and all those kinds of things. So I thought, well, I'll just have them during the conversation. They can just pass a note or text it to me or whatever it might be, and then after that. I'll ask the questions. There'll be about like a 10-minute time where people we can ask questions, and then we'll finish up and head off to the worship service.
Well, that system works well in several of the podcasts that I listen to.
Yeah.
Oftentimes that's how they'll handle it. The one that Homebrew Christianity does that a lot in his podcast.
Now he films them, so I thought about filming them at first, but then I thought, well, I'm not at that level, and there's no reason to do all of that, and so doing this audio, and hopefully it's recording. I guess it is. I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully it's recording. So. If it doesn't record, then I'll know the next time I better.
Well, you got to look to see if it's find out why not.
I better do it right, Yeah. I think through our lunches and our conversations and the podcasts that you were kind of pointing me towards, I was like, well, people might want to. I find the conversations intriguing, and maybe other people would want to listen to them. And then somebody was saying, we really need a Sunday school class for 18 to 35-year-olds at the church. And I was like, well, I don't really want to do a traditional Sunday school class. That's not really fun and cool. And
I guess depends on one's perspective.
It does.
I find Sunday school.
You find Sunday school intriguing and cool. Well, true. I agreed, but
I can see where you wouldn't necessarily.
But I thought,
plate.
no, and I thought a lot of that age group might especially if they're new to the congregation, right? If they're new,
well,
and typically people that are new, you kind of want to listen and get the feel of things before they say anything. And so a podcast might be a really nice way to listen to a conversation of people, maybe ask a question or two, and then later on, if they decide that they want to participate more, well, then they can.
And it might really appeal to that particular age group. It's kind of trendy and
Yeah, we'll see. And I've already got a number of faculties, say from Bethany and from Eastern Mennonite Seminary that are willing to do it.
Huh.
So they'll be coming in digitally.
Oh, well, certainly.
So I got to figure all that out. But
how are you going to come up with, or like if you're working with these faculty, how is one going to establish the subject matter?
Well, to start off, I guess because of my conversations with you and also, the podcasts that I've been listening to, I'm kind of interested really in exploring process theology and practical theology, and how that intersects with my journey and where I am in my faith and other people's faiths. So the start of it is going to be an exploration of process theology and practical theology with these professors. Sort of,
okay.
What is it? What are the basics of that? And then, based on some of these questions that people have, how does that help us to address some of the more perhaps controversial or difficult theological questions about God and faith? I think in particular the whole experience of bad things and evil in the world, and process theology I think helps a lot with that. The whole idea of the relationship with humanity and creation. There's this ongoing creation, as opposed to everything was created and is static, and now we're just living in that creation. I think it's very intriguing for me. I mean, there's just a lot of things, topics that are popping up and questions that are being asked. And I think, in the conversations that I've had with you, I think where we kind of both are in our faith, asking and allowing ourselves to talk about controversial, difficult, uncomfortable questions and things that I know personally, even 12, 13 years ago, I was not willing to allow myself to have. It's very cool. Mm-hmm. It's very fun. So,
and that's got to be the cutting edge of spirituality. Obviously, the way we've done it, or at least obvious to me, the way we've done it over the last 1,000 years or so, has not produced the desired result.
Doesn't seem to have.
No, well, I suppose to say desired result is kind of not very objective on my part, because obviously I have a desired result in mind, and that's not necessarily obvious.
It's not an unbiased
right,
result.
It's not unbiased, and it may not be obvious.
Yeah.
What I think the result of faith ought to be.
Right. Yeah, I was listening to. I've just gotten on Substack. I don't know if you're familiar with Substack.
Yes, I am.
And so, I'm just learning about these new things just now that I've come back to pastoral ministry, right? So I just turned everything off for 12 years. So now I'm coming back and I'm like, all the things that I wanted to find then are there. Are there now, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm getting engaged with Substack, and so all that to say, Tripp again was he was doing a live feed on Substack this morning.
Oh.
And it was can't remember the exact title, but the who, what, and if, and of God. Who's God? God. And one of the things, one of the premises that they were talking about was that.
Oh, I'll take this and then I'll turn it off.
All right.
Yeah, Jenny. I'm not sure that. Do you know whether you could use diesel fuel as a paint thinner?
I think if you can, it's probably very dangerous. I mean, probably, but I don't know that I would. I don't know. I would say Google knows.
Oh, that's a good point. Google knows. Yeah. All righty. Now I'm turning it on. Now I'm turning it on to airplane mode.
Okay. Yeah, I think in doing these podcasts, one of the things we'll have to do is make sure everybody's mobile devices are off, including ours, right? No, so they were doing this podcast, and I unfortunately didn't get to hear all of it. I tried to go back and look at it, but one of the premises that they were saying was that there's no such thing as neutrality or unbiased conversation. That
Well, I think that's
everything that we do comes from somewhere other than neutral and unbiased.
I don't know how it could be otherwise.
Well, but I think a lot of people don't realize that or don't agree with that. I hear so many people say, this is my unbiased opinion, and I've never really countered that much, and I probably won't either, because then you could get in trouble.
Yeah.
But there's no such thing as unbiased. We all bring our biases, and so the challenge of what the guy was talking about was that, at least how I interpreted it, was that we need to recognize that, and then the first step is to understand what our bias is, so that we can understand why we're asking the questions that we're asking. Because a lot of times we're asking questions, but because we don't understand our bias, we can't really find the best answer for that question. Mm-hmm. Because maybe we already want to get to a certain answer, but we don't know that because of our bias. I mean, it's very interesting. It's kind of psychological kind of things. So many dings, right?
Yeah.
I didn't realize how many mobile devices I had that needed to be silenced. I'm just dinging everywhere.
Airplane mode works great.
Is that what it works?
That's awful lot of it.
So yeah, I'm just really enjoying reading more and learning more and all of those kinds of things. So I'm not even sure how to turn this iPad.
Go to settings, and then it should have a.
There we go, silent mode.
Oh, well,
there we go. That'll work.
Too.
Well, Lord, thanks for our food. Amen. Yeah. So you always come wanting to talk about something. So you have a certain thing that you want to talk about, or are we just going to just?
No, I
chat?
think I've been thinking about the Sunday sermon and obedience and suffering.
Oh yeah.
That's what I've been thinking about. We've been here before.
Mm-hmm. So what are you thinking?
So why is it with those early brethren, was it 7 or 9?
8.
8.
including Alexander Mack.
Okay. So why would those 7 young people, 8 including Alexander, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Why would they choose to get in the river and get baptized?
Is that a rhetorical question?
Not exactly.
Okay.
Did they feel that they needed to? Did they feel that they needed to demonstrate, have a physical demonstration of their decision to throw their lot in with Christ? Did they feel that they needed to do that so that they might indeed be able to be in that relationship with Christ?
So I haven't been studying this stuff real long, okay? But I have certainly, having been in the Mennonite church, have a really good handle on why Conrad Gable and Blaurock and those early Anabaptists made their decision. And from what I've read so far on Alexander Mack and others, it seems like a similar decision. So my understanding is that in reading the New Testament, as they read the New Testament in regards to following Jesus, they had a very literal reading and interpretation, of course, according to their biases of the time, right?
No.
But a very literal reading of how they understood following Jesus should look according to the New Testament. And so in regards to baptism, they went back to, Acts 2 and Matthew 28 and, Jesus's baptism, right? And they concluded that the arc of following Jesus was to become a disciple, to be baptized, and then to follow Jesus' teachings. And so, since they were baptized as babies, right? They were baptized and then became a disciple. And their conclusion was that baptism meant nothing in their faith journey. Because they hadn't experienced it, because they hadn't chosen to do it, it was as if it had not been done. They concluded, and this is kind of my interpretation, they concluded that they hadn't really been baptized as a disciple of Jesus Christ. And so, since they felt that the New Testament was so clear that Jesus gave this example to be baptized, and then as a result of that, you became a disciple, you were baptized, you received the Holy Spirit, you became part of the church, and then you followed Jesus' teachings, they decided that they wanted to do that because they saw it as mandated, really, by Jesus and by God. And so they did it. I was anticipating this conversation with you, which I have learned to do. I think an interesting, thought or conversation to have is, suppose they had concluded that it wasn't baptism that they needed to adhere to, it was circumcision, right? Circumcision was the thing in the Old Testament.
Interesting.
Big conversation about within the New Testament that you don't need to be circumcised anymore. But let's just say, for example, somehow they concluded that it was circumcision that they needed to adhere to in order to be faithful followers of Christ. Well, there wasn't any injunction, state injunction, against circumcision. It was against rebaptism because that was aligned with citizenship and statehood and loyalty and all those kinds of things. It was tied to taxes. It was tied to military drafts, all those kinds of things. If they had decided anything else other than baptism, it would not have, I don't think, impacted their relationship to the state like it did.
Seems like a reasonable proposition.
Right?
Yeah.
But because it was baptism, now we know all of that had happened. I don't know what that does or mean or how that changes anything, but I think it does frame it a little bit in what and why they were trying to do what they were doing. They wanted to be faithful as much as I understand it. They just wanted to be faithful to following Jesus and do what the New Testament said they should do. But because of how Christendom had been established, that put them at direct odds with the state. And they were willing to accept that and still do it. That's how I understand it.
My guess, or my proposition is that given that the things that led up to that action on their part, I'm going to propose put them in a relationship with God that brought them joy and satisfaction that they had not previously experienced.
I think that's 100% true.
I think it's 100%. It just follows. So they realized, on the basis of that what was going on in the church structure of the time was not producing the results that Christ envisioned for the church. And so baptism, in a way, was a statement of social resistance, social nonconformity.
It was.
That got the powers that be's attention.
It did. It was saying, God's way first.
Yeah.
Even if it means that I'm going to be persecuted, even if it means I might be, best case scenario, exiled, maybe. Worst case scenario, tortured and killed, right? They were willing to all for Christ kind of thing, right?
And I think and now we're inching toward the sermon.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing was that these people, as I said, because of their renewed relationship with God and Christ, experienced joy and satisfaction that they had not experienced before, and they realized that this is the only way that I can get there. This is the only way that I can get to this place where it seems that God intends me to be.
I would think, because why else? Knowing the consequences, the potential consequences.
So I think that what the emphasis ought to always be is on the results of relationship with God. Well, in a way that sounds self-serving, right? Because it's about me. But it's not. That's true. It is. It is about me. I want to live in this place of contentment and joy. So it is. Yes. From that standpoint, it is about me.
Yes. Well, it is, unless you add, I think, and that's why I'm really intrigued with this whole process theology stuff. It is, unless you add that God, being a relational being, needs the relationship with you as much as you need the relationship with God.
I like that.
Because what I love about at least what I think, process theology is talking about, is that God, the being of God, is a relational God and needs the relationship with us, or I would say my understanding is, well, and that's, we're uncomfortable saying God needs,
yes,
right?
we are.
We don't like that. Does God need things? Well, I think this, where I'm going is, why is that a problem? Maybe it's better if we think that God needs the relationship with us, and it's so needy for a relationship with us that, if you believe in the incarnation, came and said, I need this I need this relationship so bad I'm willing to die for it.
Well,
not I like it. It would be nice if, one of the things that I've been waking up, it feels like daily, and talking to different people about is the loneliness and the anxiety of God. If God is a relational being, right, and we are made in the likeness of God, and of course, we all know right now we're all very lonely and we are all very anxious. Can we say, should we say, what does it do if we say that God's lonely too? God is anxious too? And that part of this invitation and relationship with God is that we're all lonely, we're all anxious, and the only resolution to that is intimate relationship with one another.
It begs, in a way, it begs the question: why would the infinite God create a finite creation, unless it's for relationship?
Yes, it does.
I mean, what's the point? Of course, I'm not God. I don't know all of God. Obviously, God's intentions, but it's a reasonable hypothesis to say that
sure.
God created because God desired relationship.
Right. So, in that stream, we've got the whole Trinitarian idea, which, there's argument, does that even come from Scripture, or is that our construct to try to describe this relationship? But, traditional theology would say, I guess, that there's this intimate relationship between this triune God, Father, Son, and Spirit, and that's enough for God. But then God just decided to make humanity and all of creation and whatnot. I don't know. I'm coming to the place where I'm just not. I'm wondering about that, right? And I'm wondering if, going back to in this, like if I follow this stream, and I think it does have to do with your question and your comments about the early Anabaptists and making these radical choices of obedience because they so desired, this relationship with God. How far will you go, right? Mm-hmm. To have a relationship with God, and how far will God go to have a relationship with humanity? And playing off a little bit about, finite humans, yes, we are finite in the sense of our organic humanity. So if you're talking about finite, we also need to talk about, are we talking about our organic experience on the earth, right? I know you do. So I'll let you talk. I'm gonna say something, and then I'm gonna eat, and then you can talk. But ponder this and talk about your thoughts on this. So, if God, this immense being, right? Whether we say that's immense or infinite or whatever the assumption is God's big, right? The being of God is expansive, all right? So an expansive God would need an expansive amount, a huge amount of relationship to be fulfilled. So if God in the beginning created the universe, right, this expansive universe that scientists tell us is continuing to expand, right? It's continuing to grow and expand, and created all of these things in it, which is an expansive amount of things, right, that we assume God could have relationships with, right? Not just humanity, but also bugs and dolphin and plants and rhizomes and whatever. God would need that universe to propagate, to grow, to expand, and to take care of itself so that it continues, so that there would, at some point in time, be enough relationships for God to be fulfilled in those relationships. Okay. Which is, take care of this thing, right? Curate it. Don't consume it. Take care of it. Propagate, grow, multiply. These are the things I'm thinking about because of our conversation. It's all your fault, really, Millard. But I'm allowing myself to listen to these things and think about these. What are your thoughts about that?
I'm thinking that I'm at a place where I believe that, well, actually, as the Bible says, that God is love. God's this abundance of just care and love.
Mm-hmm.
And all that is finite is an expression of that generous nature.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
An expression of that generous nature, and that it seems that even in the death of stars, a star doesn't die. A star ends and produces the precursors for other things that are necessary for the ongoing of the cosmos.
Mm-hmm.
And everything here, even on this earth, God designed it the same way. Everything is born, lives, and dies, but death is not an end. It's just the beginning of the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
The beginning of the next thing. But starting from the position that this infinite God is as is described, it's love. Love never ends. Love never fails. How does it say? How does it put it in that 13 Corinthians? No, does it not? Love never ends or love never fails?
I think it's love never fails. Yeah.
I think it is too. I heard that one podcast that I suggested to you, the Richard Boyle one. He says that. He said he was in a podcast and he said that love never fails. And the podcast said, well, people are going to kind of think you're a little idealistic.
Right.
I mean, it's not obvious.
Mm-hmm.
It's not obvious that love never fails.
Right.
And he made a really interesting point. He said, well, if it appears love has failed, then we're not at the end yet, because in the end, love is not going to fail.
Oh, I like that.
I did too. I like that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And if my proposition holds any water at all, where God is starting from,
mm-hmm.
then that generosity of spirit is not going to fail. You know, we may be in a bad place now, particularly, well, specifically humanity. Specifically humanity is in a bad place because we're in a place where we don't believe that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you look around our country today, and it's obvious that retribution is the thing, not love.
Right.
And a lot of times the assumption is that that's what's going to win.
Yeah.
But you know, from this perspective that we're hammering at here, it's not going to win.
Right.
Because that's not how God did things. As to whether God, I feel quite sure God desires relationship. I'm a little uncomfortable yet. I have to mull that over a bit. Mm-hmm. I'm a little uncomfortable with the notion that God needs relationship.
Yeah, me too.
I'm a little uncomfortable with that.
But what makes you uncomfortable?
I think what makes me uncomfortable is that what concept I can possibly have of an infinite God that it is love. It's a little hard to say that God needs relationship. I mean, maybe God does. I don't know. But the God desires, and we're kind of talking about humans here because God's got a relationship with everything else. And it's just us humans that are the problem.
Yeah. I mean, I think you would agree that we humans need relationships.
Now there's a tack that you could take in that argument that would help. If we are indeed created in the image of God,
I mean,
if we have the core of God in us, and we obviously need relationship.
And can feel lonely and feel rejection and feel, aren't there scriptures in the Old Testament? I long for you. Didn't Jesus say, I long, O Jerusalem?
Yeah, well, that wonderful thing where he said, I long to gather you under my wings as a hen gathers her chicks, and you would not.
So clearly Jesus needed.
Well, now, longed and needed are not necessarily exactly the same. However, back to the other argument that I was working at, if indeed, and it is obvious that we humans need relationship, if we are going to be whole,
right,
we need relationship. If we are indeed created in the image of God, that would tend to argue that perhaps God needs relationship too, since we are in the image of God.
Or at least make it something to think about, right?
And that argument seemed to follow. I mean, that makes sense.
I mean, I'm thinking maybe it does. I think it does change for me. Well, that right there would change my relationship with God.
What?
Well, if I thought that God needed a relationship with me, not just wanted a relationship, but needed a relationship for me to be fully whole. I mean, that's a radical statement right there. People are not going to like that.
Well, that explains grace.
But if God needs...
Does that explain grace or not?
Certainly, I think it's a good argument for why grace exists,
wow.
Right? So if I'm walking around the world and, I like my wife, right? I know that she needs my attention, right? To be whole. I know that she needs conversation with me. I know that she needs me to show her love. And I know that she needs, and she can be lonely, right? And she can be anxious about the world. And somehow my relationship with her can sometimes, if it's a good day, help with that, right? And so I'm motivated to foster that relationship in a different way than if there's someone walking around the world that doesn't need a relationship with me, that isn't anxious, has no feeling that they need to relate to me at all. I relate to them in a different way. Like they can just walk around autonomous in the world, and it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter to them. You know, if we meet in a pub or something somewhere and we have a good conversation, that's kind of fun every once in a while. But I think that if we look at God as this autonomous being that doesn't really, wants it, but doesn't need a relation, is fully whole whether I'm in that relationship or not. Well, that doesn't feel very good to me, right? That I'm so inconsequential. I mean, why would somebody of that opinion die for me? If that they didn't desperately want and need.
Well, again, see there you're
relationship.
I mean, why God might indeed die?
Why?
Because He wants relationship as opposed to needing,
right.
as opposed to needing relationship. Obviously, the whole point of Christ was to show us humans what it meant to be fully human, as God intended us to be. That was the whole point of it.
Well, I think that's part of the point. I've been also thinking about, I think that humanity, not just the Jewish people, but all of humanity, because, of course, Jesus interacted with all the cultures that were available for him to interact with at the time, I think had grossly misunderstood the intentions and the character and desires of God. Like major misunderstood things. About justice and love and forgiveness and sacrifice and all those kinds of things. And so, I've been, again, waking up and thinking, Jesus came to save me, okay, but save me how? Well, save me from this gross misunderstanding of who God is.
That's one thing. Yeah.
Because, if I understand who God is, the way Jesus understood the way God is, well, that's an altogether different relationship with God.
Makes a whole nother
Abba Father, right?
Makes a whole different kind of relationship possible, right?
And then that also, the outgrowth of that is also an altogether different relationship with other human beings, with creation, with the world, all those kinds of things. So I think, clearly, he was correcting misunderstandings like everywhere, with everybody.
Yeah. Look at the Sermon on the Mount's great.
Yeah.
You have heard it said, but I say.
Yeah, exactly.
Correcting misunderstandings.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I've been, and I think, kind of going back to the suffering thing, right? I am not one who says we should create our own suffering and somehow that's holy.
Yeah.
I do not agree with that at all. And I don't think that's what the early Anabaptists were doing. I don't think that they were like, hey, what's the most controversial thing we can do so that we can suffer like Jesus? So somebody will kill us and put us on a cross, and then we will have arrived. I do not think that was the case.
Right.
So when I talk about suffering, I'm no way saying we should create suffering for others or somehow manifest our own suffering, because that's holy in itself. Suffering, I don't think in itself is holy. But I think there is holy suffering in the sense that we are so willing to follow Jesus that we will suffer for that commitment. And in that commitment.
Or the discomfort or suffering that results from that commitment in no way dims the the joy of the relationship that one experiences with God. It's inconsequential.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's inconsequential.
And it's still evil, right?
Well, the suffering, I mean, the propagators of the suffering are still, obviously misguided and doing things that are probably contrary to, or would seem to be contrary to what God would most desire.
Well, it certainly doesn't justify, what the evildoer might do. That it's okay.
This is simplistic, but I got to say it anyhow. It seems to me that so much or certainly one of the emphases in Christianity has been, you got to take up your cross and follow Jesus. It's going to be suffering. Yeah. It's going to be suffering and pain. You got to obey all these rules. You can't do this. You can't play cards. Can't drink. Can't chase girls. You got to follow all these rules.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the totally wrong way of looking at things.
Okay.
It's not. It's got nothing to do with following the rules and taking up your cross and suffering and all that. It's always and first and foremost about the relationship with God and the joy and satisfaction that comes from that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not one can't get that satisfaction that Paul talks about by following rules and not doing stuff. You can only.
Well, that's what the Jewish people were doing, right?
You kind of
the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and
we can only access. Well, here's the thing. People have been led to believe that you got to follow all these rules and such, and if you do, when you die, you're going to go to heaven. The reward is the afterlife, and that we've got to destroy that notion that the reward is the afterlife, because the key is the joy and satisfaction that results from being in relationship with God. And that indeed is the definition of salvation.
Yeah, I mean, supposedly Jesus said, "This is everlasting life, that you will know me."
Yeah,
you know me.
Boy, have people missed that.
Yeah,
and I think maybe the water's getting muddied, Harry. I mean, we've made it too difficult, and we've talked about this before. It's kind of the cart, the cart before or behind the horse. This business of being inhabited by the Holy Spirit, so that one thinks like God thinks. That's the goal.
Mm-hmm.
The goal is to, as the old brethren used to say, take on the mind of Christ.
Yeah,
that's the goal.
Yeah,
and once one takes on the mind of Christ, there is where the whole joy and satisfaction of life comes from. That's the source of the joy and satisfaction of life. Mm-hmm. So I guess I'm thinking there's a mystical quality involved in this too. And we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
Do you choose to do a thing, or do you do a thing because you have the mind of Christ?
Yeah, that Rohrer quote, I think, was, what was it? You don't believe yourself into a way of life, you live yourself into believing, or vice versa.
However he put that.
Yeah, we'll have to look that up again.
Yeah, but
it was a good one.
You see, but you see what I'm saying,
Yeah.
This revelation just hasn't been with me for very long, really. It was when I was doing the study on Paul with Sunday school class, because I was puzzled. I said, how, I've always, I had a very low opinion of Paul in general, because it always it always seemed like, there wasn't an ethical component, which there is. Obviously, that was just my biased opinion.
Right.
Okay. But I was always trying to figure out what is it that Paul is saying here. How is one transformed? That's the key right there. Be ye transformed.
Yeah. Right.
Now, how is one? What is this whole transformation? That's a mystical thing, Harry. That's not something that I can do by force of will.
Right.
It can only be done by acceptance, I think. See, but by accepting the fact that God is love and God wants to be in relationship with me, and God wants to be, just all bound up with me and me with God, so that we see things the same.
Mm-hmm.
See, but people have got to believe it's possible. See, if you think that the only point of living, quote unquote, as a Christian is to get to heaven when you die, you've totally missed the point and the opportunity of a whole life.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
So the church has done a huge disservice to people.
Mm-hmm.
And it all revolves around, as you just said earlier, what your image of God is. How do you conceive of this, this
being we call
being,
God?
this thing? I mean, how do you describe? And I think that's probably where the Hebrews came from when they wouldn't name God.
I think it was
because how do you name God?
How do you name God? Right. Yeah.
And every time we name
put a
God,
label on God.
Every time we name God, it should be just understood that this is our poor effort to mention this thing that's incomprehensible.
Right.
But that we have indications of the nature of that through Scripture. And at some point, Harry, we've got to broaden our perspective so that it takes in the Hindus and the Buddhists and the Muslims too.
Yeah, all the different faith expressions.
Surely Christians aren't the only one that have some picture of God.
Right. Surely
that's not the case. I'm reading this book now. It was Amelia's. Well, I've got to get back to it. I haven't read it for a while. The title. It was her comparative religions textbook for her class at Radford, and the title of the book is "God is Not One."
I saw that. I haven't read it, but I saw that.
Yeah, and I'm going to keep reading it. My basic starting.
So you're reading that now?
I'm going to go back to it. I haven't read it for a little while.
Okay.
I read through Islam, which was completely fascinating.
Uh-huh.
He starts out, I think I told you that.
Oh, is that the comparative religions book that you?
Yeah, remember he starts out saying that all religions, start with what the problem is, and then go to what the solution of the problem is,
right?
And then you have your teachers and whatnot that talked about
worked on
that. Yeah. And you'll recall that for Christianity, according to his rendition of it, the problem is sin, and the solution is salvation.
I thought you told me that he was saying that Christianity worked at it backwards, though. No.
Well, I don't think, and I mean, it's been a while since I read that, but hopefully my memory is working for me.
I thought you had told me that Christianity works is the only one that works the other way. That the solution, you begin with the solution, which is so. Jesus.
Well, I don't think. I will check that out to be sure. But anyhow, as I remember it, each start out with a problem and then propose a solution. And for Christianity, the problem is sin.
The problem is sin.
And the solution is salvation.
Is repentance.
Through Christ.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And for the Islam, the problem is not relying on God. Think you can be self what's the word I'm looking for?
Actualized?
Yeah, that you can do it. You can do it. The thinking that you can do it yourself is the problem.
Right. Sort of the humanistic. Humanistic.
For Islam.
For Islam. Oh, okay.
And the solution is to rely entirely on God. That doesn't sound so bad.
Yeah.
That's not such a bad
thing.
Islam
comes out of the whole stream of Old Testament. And Abraham's children,
Another interesting thing that I have read recently, we're kind of getting off the subject here, aren't we? And I'm not sure why I started on this.
It's a conversation, so.
But
doesn't really matter.
I'm reading about Confucianism.
Okay.
Now, which apparently is not really it's not exactly a religion.
Okay.
It's a big body of teaching and ethical behaviors and all that kind of thing. There's no where there are books, but there's nothing. It's not like the Bible.
There's no theistic sort of relationship in Confucianism.
But apparently, that the Confucianism takes in a huge number of people. Example: somebody could not say to you that I'm a Buddhist, but I'm not a Confucius, whatever it is.
Confucianist.
Whatever. Yeah, because it's all Confucianism is all wrapped up in a lot of these other religions.
Because it's the sayings.
It's a whole
ethical.
It's a whole ethical way of living.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is pretty fascinating. I mean,
it is very interesting.
We need to know more about other world religions, and we need to start from the assumption that God has not revealed himself in only one way.
In one culture.
And only in one culture and only to one people. Mm-hmm. That's a very odd way of looking at things.
It's the typical Christian way of looking at things,
right? Yes, it is.
That we know what we're doing, and we know the way and the truth, and that is how everybody else has to believe and be and follow.
And we go so far as to say that if you don't do that, you're going to end up in this horrible place for eternity, forgetting that it depends on how one lives.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of good insights and teaching and all those kinds of things even insights into God's being and God's way in other faith traditions and cultures and religions, if you call them that. But I do feel like there is something unique about Jesus Christ. And I mean, if I didn't, I wouldn't be a Christian, right? If I didn't think that, at the very least, that the way of Jesus was I hate to use this word, but the best way.
Well, there you have it.
If I didn't think that the way of Jesus was, a great option for me, and that by following Jesus's way of living, that wasn't going to bring wholeness and salvation to me and others, I wouldn't be a Christian. I would be something else. I don't know what it would be, but I wouldn't be a Christian. I mean, that's...
Jesus, this was a great quote, just stuck around in everybody's yards. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except by me.
Right.
Well, some long time ago, I concluded what Jesus meant by that was that indeed the things he taught and the example that he lived is the way to be in relationship with God. So, indeed, Jesus was very truthful, and he said, I am the way, the truth, and the light, meaning what I'm teaching, my example, this is
this
the
way.
not me, Christ, not Jesus, me, Jesus specifically, but it's this way.
So what do you do with whoever believes in me? All those whoever believes in me statements.
I think what I do with that is again the same thing. Whoever believes in this in this thing that
These
I teach,
teachings and these
with
ways.
this
Right.
example that I've given, that's the thing. That's the key.
Right.
Not the person.
Mm-hmm.
So now the question is, are there other religions that teach similar things?
Oh, I think there
And
are.
I think there are.
I know there are.
I'm pretty sure there are.
There's a lot of synonymous teachings and principles that are scattered through all kinds of different cultures and religions.
And that should indicate something to us.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I had another thought. I hope it didn't get away. Yeah,
Must have.
I guess it did. Back to the whole business about God and creation. I remember reading a thing about the Dalai Lama a long time ago. I don't know whether it was. No, I think maybe it's just something that he wrote. I read the one where he and Nelson Mandela had that big conversation, had that big meeting over a weekend or two. That's an excellent book to read. But this for some reason, this has come to mind. But the Dalai Lama wouldn't kill a mosquito.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't figure that out at the time. But I'm starting to really starting to resonate with it a lot. If one adopts the attitude that God really is involved in
right.
all that's finite.
Yeah, I think they talk about respect for all sentient life.
Yeah, the mosquito isn't God, but there's some of God in it.
Well, there's some sort of sentient life in there. Yeah.
Yeah. So now I think I understand why the Dalai Lama took that attitude toward creatures.
Mm-hmm.
And I do it too. I don't kill spiders. I try to trap them in a tissue and throw them outdoors.
Uh-huh. And not squeeze them too hard on the way out.
Not squeeze too hard on the way out. It starts to follow. And I think if we can get people thinking in terms of this infinite God being intimate in all that is finite.
Well, if you have that much respect for insect life, you're probably not going to be someone who's going to go lead a genocide somewhere.
Yeah, and you're probably not going to be somebody that's going to strip mine an area and leave a mess, or somebody is going to operate a mine that uses millions and millions of gallons of water to refine this rare earth mineral that they're after. You'll come up with some other method of doing it.
Right.
Yeah. So I think you're really onto something it changes entirely our perspective when we start thinking about God as being intimately involved in all that is continuing to be created. Thomas Merton said that. He said that if God stopped creating right now, everything would immediately vanish.
It would cease to exist.
It would cease to exist. I mean, it all hinges on the ongoing creativity of God. Now, that gives you cold chills.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I love the idea that we are to be co-creators with God, too. Yeah.
I get you cold chills to think of that.
Yeah, you talked about transformation, and and some of the things you're talking about. Jesus said, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free, right? But then, I think when talking with Pilate, he says, "What is truth?" Right?
Did Pilate say? Pilate said that, right? What is truth?
No, I think Jesus
Oh, we'd have to check that.
Do I
I
have-
mean, I shouldn't argue, but
No, you should, because my
I
memory's
mean,
not the best.
we're
But
not-
I thought Jesus,
I think it was Pilate. that
was
said
it Pilate?
Well,
Let's look it
can
up.
you? Yeah. Do you? Let's see. Can you help with where that is?
Let me look it up.
Well, if you could look it up, I'll just leave it to you. Yeah, we should. That seems odd that Jesus would ask that question, what is truth? I feel like Jesus had a pretty good handle on what truth is. Right? Probably shouldn't have put that on tape.
Yeah. It's in John 18, 37, 38. Jesus is on trial before Pilate, and Pilate asks Jesus if he's king, and Jesus responds that he is. And he adds that he came to testify to the truth. And then Pilate says, asks what is truth.
There you go.
Yeah.
It almost had to be that. I would have been shocked. That's one of those things that might require you to sort of reevaluate positions if Jesus would actually ask what is truth.
Well, yeah.
So the church needs to be teaching that it is possible to be in intimate relationship with God, and that's the source of all satisfaction and joy in life. And I think I'm almost ready to come on board with the statement that God needs that relationship. Almost, I think.
Almost.
Yeah.
It is a little uncomfortable.
Well, I mean, I think what got me was how do you? Not that I need to explain grace. I mean, who am I to explain grace? But grace is a little, at least from our perspective, grace is a little hard to understand. But that would help to know that God, really does a little more than needs relationship with us humans.
Mm-hmm.
I think
He's willing to overlook a lot of things because of that, right?
Well, yeah, because we've always taken that position. I think that God is always calling us into a relationship because God knows that's what's best for us. And but
that's a altogether different thing.
And it's what's best for all of creation, given our position in creation. Now, what do you mean by that? Since I was running.
Yeah, but if we add the nuance that yes, God is doing that because it's in our best interests and God's. That's an all. I think that changes everything. That changes my whole perspective. It's not just in. Yeah, I'm wondering, is it just in our best interest that we have a relationship with God? Or is it also in God's best interest?
Well, now we're back to that question about need or want.
As well.
Yeah.
Because when we're in relationship together we can influence the world and its trajectory more effectively.
How about this? God needs relationship with us because that's how God influences the course of the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean,
that's an interesting thing.
You can add the whole question of prayer. I've always if God already knows, right? Why even pray? I mean, why am I asking God something or to do something? You've talked about. You've sort of stopped doing that, right?
Yeah. I just kind of hold up concerns to God. I'll just kind of think of Gaza and such, and just
because you don't see yourself as a co-influencer and creator with God.
But but no. Well, I hadn't thought in those kinds of terms anyhow. Though that's a very logical way to think about it.
Because then it would change prayer too, right? Why I pray, why I talk to God, why I talk to God about, I don't know, what's going on in Texas, right?
I suspect, I think my sort of underlying assumption was that when I lived, in the example, lived a concern for Gaza in prayer time, not assuming that God knows how best to proceed there. Maybe God wants to know that I'm concerned about it. But that also allows the opportunity, that also allows the opportunity, because of my concern, to perhaps be shown a way that I can actually
do something.
I mean, that possibility always exists.
Yeah.
In that kind of a prayer.
Yeah, I mean, I always was taught that we pray not because that changes God, but because that changes us. It aligns us more to the heart of God, right?
Well, it could have that effect depending on how one frames one's prayers.
But then I read, stories like in the Old Testament where Moses prays and changes God's mind about destroying the Israelites.
Yeah. Well, and then of course there's Moses that supposedly changes God's mind about destroying Nineveh and Sodom and Gomorrah, right?
Not Moses.
Not Moses. I'm sorry. Abraham convinces God or argues with God about his intent to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah.
So,
of course,
I think, it's intriguing to think about that relationship and what is that really? How dualistic is it?
It seems to me. I believe that the goal is, to use spiritual speak, the goal is for the kingdom of heaven to become a reality. That's the goal. Mm-hmm. Not the destruction of all the bad people in the earth and a new heaven and a new earth. The goal is the kingdom of heaven is near. The goal is for that to arrive and for that to happen, Harry. The only way that can happen is if lots and lots of people are transformed.
Yeah, it's kind of the thy will be done.
On heaven as on earth as it is in heaven. That's the goal.
Right.
And if the real faith statement is that God is love, and God's intention is for the very best for God's creation. That's the faith statement. Everything else flows from that. Mm-hmm. I think. And the whole notion of God, incarnate, amongst us, all those things flow from that initial, assumption that all creation is bending toward goodness. Now that's that's a hell of a statement. Mm-hmm. To actually believe that.
Yeah.
In the face of all that's going on, to actually believe that all is tending toward goodness, the goodness of God. But anyhow, that's kind of where it's got to start. It seems to me, because everything else stems out of that. The way we relate to other people. Or do we believe God is vindictive and so we're vindictive? Do we believe God's punishes so we punish? Or do we believe that God is epitomized by love and mercy, and we treat our fellow human beings the same way?
Mm-hmm. Well, again, it goes back to your image of God.
It goes back to the image of God. It does. It does. All these are fun times.
Well, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed our first podcast. Please subscribe. Any comments you might have, we'd love to hear those. Any suggestions? And of course, we'd love to have you join in on the live podcast at Pleasant Valley Church of the Brethren in Weir's Cave on Sunday mornings. We start around 9:30 a.m. Hope to see you soon.